A very good evening and welcome to Dan Really Like presented by Pick and Pay. And a warm welcome once again to the town of St Andrews in Scotland and to the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships, where, as with Monday, I find myself celebrating both a fabulous golf tournament and some delightful South African wine that finds its way through to this part of the world for what is an iconic week on the golf calendar. Now, it's not surprising at all that there is South African wine here, because the man behind the tournament is Anthonij Rupert, and he's also behind some of South Africa's finest wine. And we'll be trying some of that wine in just a moment, as Johan's Anthonij Rupert blend forms the cornerstone of our three wines we're trying. We also have some Rust and Vrede on the horizon, and a rather nice bottle called Number 6 from Schalk Burger, which celebrates both wine and rugby. And I'll be introducing my very special guest in just a moment. Before we do that, though, very cool day yesterday. Spent some time filming with Dave Farrell, the bass player at Lincoln Park. Dave is not just a wonderful, wonderful musician, he's also a very keen and dedicated collector and drinker of wine, and he and I have got a very, very exciting project on the horizon, hopefully for next year, bringing together Stellenbosch and Napa. But look out for the two of us trying some Stellenbosch and Napa wines over the course of the next couple of weeks. So a really cool week here. The golf, I'm looking out over St Andrews at the moment. Bit of rain here today, but still golfers having a great deal of fun, as they will over the next few days, with the tournament culminating here at the Old Course on Sunday. Right now, though, at the Rusacks Hotel, which is where I find myself, my regular stay here at the Dunhill. We are talking wine. We're talking South African wine that's on the menu this week at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships. We spoke about wine a little earlier this week from Ernie Els, and from Reuben Rothschild, and from Waterford. Tonight it is Anthonij Rupert, it is Rust and Vrede, and it is Welbedacht. And my guest this evening, the man behind Rust and Vrede, is John Engelbrecht. The man behind Welbedacht is Groot Schalk Burger, and the man who runs the entire Anthonij Rupert wine empire is Gareth Robertson. Gentlemen, a warm welcome. Lovely to have you all on the show.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Hello, how are you?
Great to see you all, and three people I know are very happy to be on the show, but would be far happier being here in person. And I think, Bear, for you, the FOMO is particularly strong from a wine perspective, because this really is one of the highlights of your year, coming over and curating a selection of wine from not just your own brands, but the other great brands who come together every year, and showcasing just fabulous South African wine.
No, Dan, you're 100% right. It is an amazing event, and what the Alfred Dunhill team does in putting that event on is great. But yeah, more particularly, it's really special, showcasing some of South Africa's best wines to an amazing audience. And only drinking South African wines during the course of the week is a great sort of advertisement for our industry. So yeah, definitely a lot of FOMO from my side, but I'm glad the wines are there and people are enjoying them.
We had a conversation earlier in the week with Carla Malharba from Reuben Rothschild, and I'll ask you a very similar question to the one I asked her. It would have been very easy. This is a Richemont event at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships. You could have just kept things in-house, purely had the Anthonij Rupert wine brands, and that would have been more than understandable, and a great selection of wine. But you don't do that. You bring in a lot of friends of Johan, people like Jean, like Schalk, and their wine. Well, what's the motivation behind showcasing so much different South African wine beyond just your own brands?
I think it's definitely Johan Rupert's vision of that, and showcasing the best of South Africa. Yes, we make exceptional wines, and we have quite a big portfolio or shopping basket, from whites to reds to sparkling. But I think his vision was bigger, and with the audience like that, to showcase some of South Africa's best wines, it's an amazing platform, and it's good to showcase the industry. So yeah, I definitely think it also adds to the event. Not every person enjoys our wines, but there are definitely some that enjoy Schalks or Jean's, whoever else our partners are this week.
I'm not sure I've yet met the person who doesn't enjoy your wine, Bear, but I suppose that person might exist somewhere. So you've got FOMO from a wine perspective. I know someone who's got industrial FOMO from a golf perspective is a regular. I have to tell you, Schalk, I must have been asked by about 100 people over the course of the last few days, where's Big Schalk? Where's Schalk? Why isn't he here? We are missing you, Schalk. It's very, very sad not to have you at the tournament this year.
I'm missing all of you guys as well. Huh? Just remember, it's not easy sitting here in South Africa seeing all those great photographs of the 18th and the 1st and the Old Course Hotel and stuff like that. So I've had a bit of a back problem and now a neck problem. And I haven't played golf in 4.5 months. But hopefully that will come right. The back's coming right. I'm busy with the neck, and hopefully we can get through that without an operation. So I'm really missing the guys, and please send all my best regards to everybody over there.
I will indeed. I can tell you there's one person who's not unhappy you're not here. I bumped into Rooster, who's the official event physio. He reckons his workload's been cut in half because you're not here this year, Schalk. But he's missing you terribly, as we all are, because this is an event that's all about friendship, and you have many friends at this tournament, but one in particular. Tell us about the friendship with Johan and the times the two of you go back together.
Well, it's been a long time. I started playing there, thankfully, through my friendship with Johan, in the days when it was still the Dunhill Cup. And I'll never forget that wonderful celebrations when South Africa won it. David Frost and Tief Goosen and everybody else won it many years ago. We used to tour around Scotland and do a few trips before the Dunhill Links Championship was created. So I think that's about nearly 28 years ago that I've been going there. And the development of the Dunhill Links is such a wonderful competition. And what Johan's done for golf, and Dunhill being the longest serving sponsor in the whole European tour, it's just been a fantastic journey. And I mean, every year to be able to go there, meet wonderful guests, wonderful friends, and stuff like that. It's just been fantastic. So, I feel quite funny not being there, not being able to go to the South African evening, being with the Rusak's mates, all the other friends that I've met through Johan around the years. I think about all the actors and stuff that we scrummed and all the various crazy things that we've done there. It's all been such wonderful, wonderful memories. So I'm really missing it. And it just shows you what a wonderful, wonderful tournament it is.
It is indeed. We don't have you. We do have some of your wine, though, Schalk. We were drinking your Pinotage a couple of nights ago, and we're going to be trying the number 6 with you in just a moment. So the wine will be a placeholder, but we definitely want you back next year, adding so much to the event, as does the wine. You have a great friendship with Johan. Jean Engelbrecht, that applies to you as well. You and Johan go back a fair way, and have, I'm sure, shared a few glasses of wine along that way.
Yes, we have, and I think just to latch on to what Schalk said, I think that for me the Dunhill is one of those events that every year that you attended is a life-enriching experience, and you make friends there. You share a couple of glasses of wine. You have great laughs, which I think is a very important part of what the Dunhill is, and I think that what Johan and the entire Dunhill team has created is it's like a brotherhood of friends that get together, and it is most probably the only event that I've ever been to in my life where there's no egos. I think Johan famously always said many years ago that egos have to be checked at the door, and I think that makes it very, very special, and he has been very gracious in having a nice. Every year there's a nice South African contingent, which adds to bringing us in contact with a greater circle of Johan's friends, and with whom we've become friends over the years. So not being there this year, as Schalk said, it's a kind of a funny feeling, an empty feeling. But I'm sure that there will be opportunity again next year. I know Schalk is struggling with his neck, and it'll be great to be back in normal circumstances and just raise a glass to the wonderful friendships that the Dunhill was responsible for.
And they are extraordinary friendships. It's been a great week just catching up with people we haven't seen for 2 years, usually over a glass of wine. You talked about the people here, the egos being checked in at the door, and they certainly are. There's none of that at this event. That said, though, it is an event full of enormously influential people who come to this event from right around the world. And what does it mean to you, Jean, to know that each year you've got really some of the most influential business leaders and entrepreneurs on the planet here each year and drinking your wine?
Well, I think just anybody that drinks wine, that is what people like Gareth and Johan and Schalk and myself are looking for, and I've seen wine being the cement between so many relationships and friendships that has been formed at the Dunhill. There are every year there's new people that maybe as a natural choice, wine is not first on their list, but eventually wine becomes part of the Dunhill as the game is. It's an everyday occurrence, and it's a manifest of just how important wine, the role that wine plays in one's life. And once people who's been exposed to it for the first time, they never go back. To them, it is a next level, and that with golf and friendship and the entire environment and the atmosphere and the camaraderie and the brotherhood, that is unbelievable. It's unsurpassed, and it's not. I don't think it's matched in any tournament where amateurs are involved in the world.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on those sentiments, and I do love the fact that this is South African wine that's been showcased to so many people. Bear, talk us through the impact you've seen South African wine have here, because on a Thursday night I've got the job for you tonight. A poor replacement, but I shall do my best. But normally on a Thursday, you'll be manning the wine stand, watching the wine getting poured out. Every year there are people here for the first time, and as a result, in many cases, trying proper South African wine for the first time. How many eyes have you seen open? How much of a sense of discovery have you seen play out at this tournament as people try South African wine and get very pleasantly surprised?
Yeah, Dan, I think over the years, there's definitely been more of an increase of people really being almost astounded with the quality and how much they enjoy it. I think because there's so many people from different parts of the world and often have preconceived ideas of what South African wine should taste like. But once they come in, and it's usually the guys that have been there for a couple of times and there's a newbie, it's almost like part of their initiation that they must taste some of the South African wines, and they're very pleasantly surprised. And I think with the quality, meeting also the personalities behind the brand, like Schalk and John, it really adds to it. And they really start becoming sort of your sort of foot soldiers out there into the rest of the world. And I think the big thing is actually a lot of people that taste South African wine for the first time at the Dunhill are really pleasantly surprised of how good the quality is. And we've seen orders obviously come through, and also people starting to enjoy more South African wines in their home country.
So people starstruck a little by South African wine. What about you getting starstruck by the people, Bear? Have there been moments as you're pouring wine and suddenly look up and go, oh my goodness, look who I'm pouring this glass of Cabernet Sauvignon for?
Definitely, Dan. Yeah. I don't follow the celebrities that much, but yeah, it's almost like first time you've seen them. I recognize this guy from somewhere. But Jean also alluded to it earlier. A lot of all those egos and everything are checked at the door, and I've been pleasantly surprised of how genuine and amazingly nice people they are, and also to share a glass of wine with people of this sort of stature is just, it's an amazing experience.
Schalk, what about the understanding of South African wine? You're a great person to have a conversation with, and there are not many topics I haven't heard you able to articulate on quite comfortably, but wine is a particularly passionate one, and I know it comes up a lot. How well do you find the guests at this event and the people you meet from around the world are versed in South African wine?
Well, it's a very interesting thing. It's that people come there because of golf. And golf has got this amazing history of tradition, and I think there's no better place to go than St Andrews. Just standing on those fairways with the shadows floating over those fairways, you're like in heaven. And I mean, similarly, wines, wine farms, John, Johan, all the other guys that are there, we've got traditions. We tell stories. We work with land. We custodians of land that has been there for millions of years. And it's when these marry, and it's just wonderful that Johan allows us the opportunity and affords us the opportunity to be able to speak to other countries, as we're seen as very much a new world wine country. But we've got older soils than France, and it's been proven. So what's important to me is to be able to stand there and be able to be an honest and good representative of South Africa and all the other wine farms. And the big thing is there's a camaraderie where we all tend to believe in the same principles. There's a like-mindedness, which helps us sell South Africa and South African wines at a higher level. The sad thing with that, being in the UK, it's like 5-6 of the top brands being sold in the UK are not owned by South Africans. 68% of all wine being sold there is bulk. It's not even certified. So this merry band of people standing in the hallowed grounds of St Andrews, pouring our wines, it's just a wonderful thing, to be able to say there's tradition, there's background, there are basic principles here that we apply. And when people hear that and see that, they think totally different about South African wine. That's what I like doing. Forget about my own wines. It's about helping the South African industry.
And this will be another important week of doing exactly that. It would also be a week, Schalk, if you were here, where you'd be ticking off what is just about your favorite event of this week alongside of the band on the Saturday night. And that's a rather long lunch that you normally have with a gentleman called Ian Botham and a gentleman called Alan Lamb.
Yeah, look, I'm rather dumbstruck with regards to that one. It's become a rather well-known thing. Some people haven't been able to pick themselves up off that great canvas chair outside the seafood restaurant. But haven't we had wonderful times just being there? We drank the tide in and we drank the tide out there. And I mean, we've cleaned out whole stocks of bottles of wine, and we've cleaned out all their clams and special stock. So, once a year, sitting there with a lot of great friends from around the world and regaling stories, and given the fact that we haven't been there for some time, given COVID, I'm really going to miss that. But isn't that a wonderful, wonderful event? And I'm going to miss my friends.
Well, you're very much in our thoughts this week as the Alfred Dunhill Links Championship plays out. That's where we are this week, where the show is coming to you from as we talk Rust and Vrede, Welbedacht, and we talk the wines of Anthonij Rupert. We're going to have a look and pour some of those wines in just a moment, and very much looking forward to doing so. Jean, in terms of the wine that you do have, there's a whole range of it here. We're going to be trying the 1694. There are people who are watching the show who maybe don't particularly drink a lot of red wine. They only drink white wine. Not something they could find from you. Give us the story behind that. Why Rust and Vrede is just red, and whether there ever will be a white wine on the horizon.
Dan, I think the whole thing with Only Red really started in my dad's era, and where he felt that the soils that we have lean itself to the production of red wine, specifically the varietals that we focus on, which is Cabernet and Syrah. I wholeheartedly buy into that concept. I think it's good for Rust and Vrede. By that, I'm not saying that Rust and Vrede couldn't make a white wine, but I don't think it's on the cards for us. We work with 95% with, well, more actually, just 2 varietals. We have a little bit of Merlot. When I say a little bit, it's basically 6 or 7 tons that we use just in a blending purpose for a specific wine. And we will eventually even phase that out. And so it will only be Cabernet and Syrah. So I think that white wine has got a place in the wine drinking hierarchy. I always like to start with a white wine because it's a great way to rinse your palate. But if you look at a day of drinking wine and you look at an evening of drinking wine, then for me, white wine is most probably a beverage. And I like the gravitas that red wine brings to the table, that brings to conversation, that brings to a meal. And for us, we're not a very big estate, so all our wines are made from fruit that's grown on the estate. But focusing on 2 varietals works for us. We're comfortable with it, and if we see how much we've learned and are still learning in 45 years just working with those 2 varietals, I think there's still a lot to be learned in the next 45 years. So to answer your question, we will remain a wine estate, a producer that produce Cabernet and Syrah varietals.
I still remember, Jean, you do have a couple of other labels, and with that Donkey's Bye, there's a Steen. And I remember you coming on the show and forcing you to drink some Shannon, and the pain on your face as I made you consume a palate-cleansing beverage instead of some proper wine. The red wine you make has become incredibly popular and well-established around the world from a very, very small selection. And it's a similar philosophy that applies to your restaurant. I was there, about a month or so ago now, and had a fabulous afternoon. But it's quite a simple menu to come and visit you. It's the steak pretty much. You know what you like and you like it.
Yes, Dan, we actually like to keep things more on the simple side. We've for our lunches here at the winery, we've now for how long is it now? 2007, 14, 15 years. We've been offering your choice is a sirloin or a salmon, and that's what it is. And there's no dessert. You get served with a glass of wine. And the only reason that you don't get the glass of wine, if you're underage, you have some medical reason. But otherwise, we try and promote the whole idea with wine and food all together. And I know there, when you're at the Dunhill, you can when you bump into our friend Paul Harris, you can actually ask him that we were many, many years ago when both Schalk and I were younger. Paul wanted to see how much wine we can drink in a day, and if you drink wine, it's different from beer or any other alcoholic beverage. It is a day. You talked about a long lunch. It's preferably a long lunch that gradually grows into a very nice dinner, informal dinner. But it's important what you eat with it. Wine is not something that you can rush. Wine is not something that you should have without food. You can, but it's not something that you want to do. And I think if you get into that kind of frame of mind that wine and food goes together, then you've stepped yourself into a new realm of experiencing something that if you didn't know it, you didn't know that it existed. And if you share that with friends, and whether it's at the Dunhill or just around a very informal South African braai, that's very special. And that's also what Schalk always talks about, is creating moments. You've got to create moments in your life, and you will remember all those moments. And when people come here and we only have two choices to eat during lunch, in the 14 years that we've been serving it, we've never had a complaint. I think that the challenge is that you must always ensure 7 days a week, 12 months a year, 14 years consecutively, that your standard of the two options that you have on offer is always the best quality, and that the wine that you offer with it is also of the best quality, and that they pair well together. And that's where that concept has come from for us, and it's something that it's simple, but it works for us.
If you haven't been to it, I highly recommend to visit the restaurant at Ruston Vrede. Good bottle of red wine, great place to steak, and you're in for a very, very good lunch indeed. Schalk, if we can go back to your career a little, backpedal a bit, the world first got to know you as a marauding forward in a Springbok jersey, putting fear into the hearts of opposition all over the world. Was there always the plan to move into the world of wine, or was it a little bit more accidental than that?
No, Dan, it was a question of, as a young kid, I used to work on wine farms, and I grew up quite poor. I loved the vine, and I thought I'll maybe always get into it. And it was something that excited me. And, I've got a little adage that I normally say. I said, I couldn't afford, my wine taste to be able to supply it. So I had to buy a wine farm to supply myself. Just listening to John there with regards to certain long lunches that we've had, which I think many people wouldn't believe the amount of little glass vessels we consumed. But with that also went a lot of fun and friendship. And it is a friendship industry. We've gone through a terrible time through COVID and everything, and we've tried to make it a little bit better for ourselves. But it was a labor of love. It's understanding the soil. It's like playing rugby. You need good basics. You can't scrum, you can't do lineouts. You can't expect people to do other things on the field. And, for a short period of time, being able to walk on a piece of land and being called the custodian of the land and being able to change it and plant it and create product that comes from it, and I went and built my own cellar and did unique things. And listening to Johnny, one day came there and he said, "What you doing?" I said, "I'm busy laying out my cellar." And I was busy, I had chalk in my one hand and a few bricks in the other hand. I was like, designing this, and the architect said to me, "You can't do it." I said, "But he who pays, he can determine." So it's been a labor of love and passion, and I would like to be recalled as such.
When you look back on what you've done in the wine industry, and then you look back on the rugby career you had, was there stuff you learned from the world of rugby that you were able to translate into becoming the winemaker, the wine farmer that you are today?
I can't think of more poignant words than, making an honest wine. Wine that relates to the soil that it comes from. That is a site-specific wine. That somebody can come there and drink the wine. And one day somebody asked me, "But what makes that different?" And I said, "It's being at Sandy Bay." And they said, "Why? What has a wine got to do about being on a nudist beach?" And I said, "What you see is what you get." And so in rugby, it's very much the same. The rugby players that you remember are the people who leave a little bit of themselves on the field and in the minds of the spectators. And and you need certain basics, you need certain skills. So putting that all together, it's very much like leading a rugby team. Some games everything comes right, some don't. We all know that the French have got a great old saying: "The dear Lord provides; we on earth can only care." And with regards to that, it's so important. We can only do certain things on earth, and if we do that right, then it all should come together. So it leaves you small, because many times when you win the big competitions, the big championships in rugby, you don't really know. The media will say this guy scored the best try, but there's a prop, there's a lock, there's a hooker that's put his part together. It's a team effort, and that's sometimes difficult in farming. But the analogy of rugby and wine, it's very close to one another.
I think most of us were trying to take in that philosophy and understand it and listen to it, while also trying not to envisage Schalk Burger at Sandy Bay in full splendor, walking across the beach. But if that is image in your head, I fear it will not be gone for some time. Almost time to drink some wine. Just very quickly before we do that, Gareth, we're only drinking one of your wines, but there is a huge range. Just give us a sense of the geographical diversity of the Anthonij Rupert ranges, and particularly give us a sense of how much of Rural Swartland is now playing, because I seem to see more and more wine, especially in the Cape of Good Hope range, coming in and adding a really rich dimension to what you have to offer.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So the Anthonij Rupert wine portfolio consists of the Anthonij Rupert range, which focuses on a flagship blend, which we will taste today, a Cab, a Merlot, a Cabernet Franc, a Syrah, and the Optima. And then on our other ranges, we have the Genre Rosé, and then the Cape of Good Hope, which is all site-specific wines, and our Terra Capo and our Protea. So the portfolio and the Lomron's sparkling or Cap Classique, so we do have a wide and diverse sort of portfolio, but we're very fortunate to have different terroir in different parts of South Africa to make all these wines. And we have dedicated winemakers that make each individual wines, the white winemakers or the red winemakers or the Cap Classique winemakers. So today, obviously, our focus is really on the Anthonij Rupert blend, which is all made at the farm in Franschhoek, Lomron's estate, and it's a Bordeaux style. So I firmly believe that Bordeaux varieties in Franschhoek do extremely well. And out of those varieties, I think Cabernet Franc is definitely my favorite, and I think that does best in our estate. We're very fortunate, as you spoke about the Swartland. The Rupert family own a property in Rubik's Rivier, which has some ancient sort of Cinsault, some Chenin Blanc, and then more newer plantings of Shiraz, Mourvedre, Carignan, and Grenache. And on the white varieties, some Marsanne, Roussanne, and Viognier, and some some new plantings of Chenin as well.
I love the fact you've referenced the Cabernet Franc. It's one of my favorites from your range. But that Anthonij Rupert, certainly not bad. I'll tell you a story about that in just a moment in the context of the Dunhill. The Winership time of what you're watching. Hello, Winership Wines UK in London. Lovely to have you watching the show. And the poet, the wine poet that is Reginald Peck, Claire. People who mastered the meaning of one size fits all in a glass and absolute wine chemistry that has placed the Cape on the map. What a beautiful way of ending our Heritage Month with the great of the greatest, Jean Engelbrecht and Schalk Burger, actually all the legendary Cape masters. My heart is at peace. Cheers. Well, cheers to you too, Reginald. Right, let us try some wine. And the first of those we're going to try is from Welbedacht. It is the number 6, which I've got here. First, tell us about the name Schalk, because in the long line of Schalks, because if I'm not mistaken, your dad was Schalk and his dad was Schalk, and his dad was Schalk, and his dad was Schalk, and so on. And your son is Schalk, and his son is Schalk. So there's a bit of a name shortage in the Burger family. The number 6 would refer to the next generation of Schalks down from you.
Yeah, it's just not Schalk, they're all Schalk Willem Petrus Burger, just to put you into place. Yeah, when we sat down to do something unique, me and my sons, can you believe we all 3 played provincial rugby in the number 6 jersey? Obviously, me not as much as my son Tian, or him not as much as my son Schalk, who also became Rugby Player of the Year in the world in the number 6 jersey. So we decided to register the name number 6, and we've got 6 cultivars in. And as you can see, it's in a burgundy bottle. It's a Burgundian style Syrah based with a variety of Vrede. It's even got a white wine in there. It's got Vrede in there, Petit Verdot, a little blend around of stuff, Vrede and Cinsault. And the first blend we made was only 6 barrels, then 12. It's always been a multiple of 6. So it's on the label, doesn't say what cultivars are in there. If you buy the box, it's in the box. There's a little info piece on it. So it's done very well for us. We only release it in limited numbers, and it's normally sold out as such. I hope you enjoy it.
I certainly am, as I have before. We spoke on Monday with Louis Stradham about the Ernie L signature. We talked about how the signature reflects Ernie's very specific taste, his love of a big Cabernet-led Bordeaux blend. Is this the kind of wine that Schalk Jr. particularly likes?
Yeah, I don't think he can afford it, but he likes it. So he also gets it on allocation. Let me put it like that. So yeah, he likes his red wines, and it's always difficult to make a quite discerning wine that drinks rather young very nicely, but then it's also got legs, that can last for the European market. Likes to buy the more expensive wines to cellar it and to keep it for years to come. And South Africa is getting that right. We weren't renowned for that, but I think we are getting that right.
So that is the number 6 from Welbedacht, which kicks us off. And when you look at just the heft of the bottle, I mean, this is proper murder weapon stuff. But there's a lot more elegance and subtlety than you might imagine, as there was to the game of both burgers when they weren't busy half-throttling people at the bottom of the rack. There was a deft touch to all of them. So that's our first wine for the sea. Let's move on to the second one. And number 6, we know, celebrates the jersey number of Schalk Burger Jr. Jean, what about 1694? What does that tell us?
Dan, the first title deed of Vrede is dated the 12th of March, 1694. That title deed hangs in my office, which used to be my father's office as well. And I thought it was a very special date to have a physical title deed from 1694. And we celebrated the origin of the property by producing this wine and just calling it 1694. That's the story behind it. The blend is 65% Syrah and 35% Cabernet, which will make it our flagship wine. But our signature wine is a wine that my father started in 1983 called just Vrede Estate. Which is Cabernet based, majority Cabernet, 60% Cabernet. So we on the 1694, we went the route where we made Syrah the dominant varietal. And 2015, which is the year that you have there at the Dunhill, was we were in the midst of our drought. In South Africa, but especially in the Cape, in the Western Cape. So we had to manage our irrigation extremely well. There was there was no leeway to make any mistakes on irrigation, because we had a little bit of rain and the wind and the end of the winter, and then we had nothing. And it was a warm, hot summer, no rain. Normally we would get a little bit of rain during summer, which we didn't get. So the wine that was a result of it actually is very dark in color. Where we now in 2021, if you taste the wine, you'll find that it's very the Syrah characteristics are still dominant. But I think that in the next 3-4 years, the Cabernet characteristics will come more to the forefront and even blend further in. And that's why we try and promote that the wine is kept 8 to 10 years for optimum aging. In reality, however, that does not happen, and not even at my own home. I think we too much in a hurry to drink younger wines. I know that Johan has been an advocate of letting wine age sufficiently, and they've done it very successfully with their own range of wines, the Rupert wines. But I think we just sometimes in too much of a haste to open a bottle and put the wine out on the market. Having said that, these days wine is far more approachable at a younger age. But the story behind the wine, as I said, it was to celebrate when the property started, when the property originated, and I think it's nice to Schalk was telling us about that we are custodians of land, and you look after it for the next generation and stuff. And if you the older you get, the more you realize the responsibility you have by being the custodian of a piece of property that is 450 odd years old. It is an immense responsibility on your shoulders. And the sad thing is you can drive around the Western Cape and you see so many of these properties that is in derelict condition, which is very sad. But you can also drive around and see places where people has taken pride into it. They put in a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of soul into the property to make sure that it's still there for the next 400 years. And I think that's the challenge, but that's also the satisfaction that I get out of it, and I think both my parents got out of it, because you've been here, and it's a magnificent place, and I am just every day. I appreciate the fact that I grew up here and that I still live here and I live in the house that I grew up in. I think that's very special, and it makes me realize every day that I have an immense responsibility in ensuring that the property continues to grow, that the property continues to become better, and with that, the foundation of the property, which is wine.
Well, it's wine that reflects all of those qualities you were speaking of in terms of Ruston Vrede as an estate, because it's already at 6 years quite splendid. Although if we have the patience and we can hang on to it a little longer, there is still more of this particular story to be told. Yeah, just a quick word on the blend. Schalk talking about the 6 varietals he's got within his number 6. 2 wines, it would seem, well, surely it must be much simpler, but maybe you don't have as much variety to patch things up or make the tapestry work a little better. Harder or more difficult to do a blend with just 2 versus 5 or 6?
It's definitely easier, Dan. I mean, that's a fact. I think if you look at the wines that's on the tables this evening or at the Dunhill, what is interesting about it and what's nice about it, they come from 3 different wine growing and wine producing areas. Johan's property is in Franschhoek, Schalk's property is in Wellington, myself is in Stellenbosch. We are not far apart, but we are terroir based, climatically based, very, very different. And each property lends itself to producing specific varietals that does very good there. I know for a fact that at Lormara, the Cab Frank is an outstanding varietal which just does not work here at Vrede. Many years ago, my father planted a little bit of Cabernet Franc in the early 80s. It's just something that didn't work for us. And if you go to Schalk's property, Schalk has a very big property in Wellington, and it lies up the slopes of the Groenberg Mountain. And he has pockets that is within his own property, so very different climatically and terroir wise, that he has the ability to grow 6 different varietals that does very well, because he has these different microclimates within one property. Our property is much smaller, so we don't have that luxury. So yes, it's much easier to work with 2 varietals, and as I mentioned before, we only have the 2 varietals. So I work with 100% of the varietals that we produce.
And you do so with both flair and great success. And if you don't believe me, ask everybody who's had the wine at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships, where it is always a very popular attendee. And let's go to our final wine. And Bear, I'm reminded when I pick up the Anthonij Rupert blend, which I have here before me, the 2012 version thereof. Dinner here at the Dunhill, it was the Friday night, probably 4 or 5 years ago, quite a table, sitting mildly starstruck with Brian O'Driscoll and the actors Jamie Dornan and Matthew Good, and Peter Jones from Shark Tank and Dragon's Den was with us as well. And my job for the evening was to select the wine, and this was the wine I brought out. And Peter in particular has got a great collection of obscenely expensive Bordeaux. They've all drunk great wine around the world. To a man, they were all blown away by the quality of this particular wine. And I think the fact that, as Jean mentioned, you do get to age it a bit longer only reinforces the appeal and the allure of it. Tell us a little bit about this blend, what makes it up, and why you think Davy and team get this one so right.
Yeah, Dan, I think as I mentioned earlier, the Franschhoek property and the Lomrands estate, Bordeaux varieties do extremely well here. So we've got some exceptional Cabernet and Cabernet Franc and some Merlot and a tiny bit of Petit Verdot. And I think it's only more in recent years that we've discovered the Cabernet Franc doing really well. I was fortunate to spend 9 years on the Helderberg and then coming over here, just seeing that Cabernet Franc really does well. And I think it's just maybe a bit more warmer than on the Helderberg. And we get a lot more fruit in the mid-palate, still keeping those amazing sort of aromas and the structure with it. I think, as Jean said, we're very fortunate to age our wines a little bit longer and release that. And I think that really helps a lot for people really to fall in love with this wine. We on the tail end of the 2012 going on to the 2013, which is an exceptional vintage, and the main base of the wine is 40% Cab, 40% Cabernet Franc, and then 20% Merlot. And over the years it changes every year, but still the main basis of the blend is Cabernet and Cabernet Franc. We started producing it in 2005, only releasing our first vintage in 2007, and right up until the 2020 vintage that we blended, those 2 varieties have really shone through exceptionally well.
I think appropriate to finish, Bear, just with a little history lesson. And many people, I'm sure, will know the sad story behind the name here. But for those who don't, this is Johann Rupert, but it says Anthonij Rupert. Remind us, if you will, the legacy of Anthonij, who is celebrated through this wine.
Yeah, the Rupert family have owned the property for over 50 years. And the late Anthonij actually lived on Lomara and started the Lomara brand, and was really instrumental. I think very fortunate to study in Geisenheim, come back, bring some amazing varieties like Pinot Grigio and Sangiovese to South Africa, and really starting Rupert and Rothschild and getting that on the go. Sadly, when he passed away, Johann took over in 2003 and dedicated it to Anthonij. So hence the name Anthonij Rupert Wines or Weine. and decided to produce, his goal was really to produce some of South Africa's best wines, and realized that we can do amazing Bordeaux blends on the Franschhoek Lommerat property, but also acquired some property in Elandskloof and the Swartland, and in Darling, and more recently in Wellington. So I think the home is Lommerant's, and it's an ode to the late Anthonij for his foresight of also trying to pursue producing fantastic quality South African wines.
Well, it's a legacy that continues. I think he'd be proud, Ben, not just of the wine that you guys are making today, but also of how it's been showcased this week at the Dunhill, where so much great wine from across South Africa is brought around a table, and people from all over the world are able to indulge it. We've spoken tonight about the Rupert wine, about the Welbedacht, about the Rusted Vrede. On Monday, we chatted about the Annie Else wine, also the Reuben Rothschild, the Waterford. There's also La Motte wine. Occasionally, there's some American wine that sneaks in, or one or two others, but it's almost always just South Africans, and very proudly so. And it is again this year. So although we don't have the three of you here in person, your wines mean you're very much here in spirit, and we're very grateful for that. Lots of old fans drinking them happily, lots of new fans discovering them happily, and me just directing traffic whenever I can and ensuring people get to the kind of wine that I'm sure they will enjoy. So on that note, guys, I do have a wine tasting to get off to, and so I will bid you all farewell. But thank you all so much for the time, for joining me, for providing some fabulous wine to get my evening going. And hopefully in a year's time, we're all sitting around a table in person, drinking some wine in Scotland and tasting South Africa's finest. So thank you, guys, and much appreciated.
All the best.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, John.
Good luck tonight.
Thanks. So there we go. Schalk Burger, the great Springbok, now the proprietor at Welbedacht, Jean Engelbrecht, out at Ruston Vrede, the second generation of a red winemaking empire, and Gareth Robertson, who oversees the Anthonij Rupert wines across the brands, and he's normally kind of the head sommelier, really, at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships. He's not here this year, so sadly not seeing him, but fantastic to at least have their wine, and that's going to be enjoyed particularly tonight, which is the wine tasting evening at the tournament, as all of the guests, what a lineup this year, everybody from Andy Garcia to Tico Torres from Bon Jovi to Vladimir Klitschko, extraordinary collection of people, and they'll all be enjoying that wine this evening. Speaking of Tico Torres from Bon Jovi, he, along with Tom Chaplin from Keane and Ruud Gullit, the Dutch football great, are all my guests on the Dan Nicholl Show this evening, filmed here in Scotland at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships. That'll be on SuperSport 11 tonight at 8 p.m. So do catch the show. And if you're watching this and you're part of the Pick and Pay Wine Club and you're getting ready to jump over to this evening's live tasting, well, I'll be hosting that one as well with the team from Pongratz. So I shall see you very shortly for that. Leaves me just to say a very big thank you. I think Monday's show is going to be from an airport in Edinburgh, so it could be a little different. But then as of next Thursday, back and home in South Africa after 3 weeks. A very welcome travel. It's been a long time since I have been on the road. Thank you very much for joining us. Big thank you to all three of our guests. Some splendid wine and some great conversation on my very favorite subject. We'll see you again next week. Enjoy your Thursday evening. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.